10 interconnected stories from Northern Ontario. Highway 522 cuts through the Northern Ontario wilderness like a scar through pale skin. In February 2019, a transport truck driver named Marcus Holt reported something to the Ontario Provincial Police that didn't make it into any official records, though dispatchers remember the call. What exists is a series of handwritten notes from Constable Sarah Chun, kept in her personal effects after she resigned 6 months later. Marcus had been driving the route between Sudbury and North Bay for 11 years. He knew every curve, every frost heave, every place where black ice formed. The Ashford Bridge, a rusted steel structure spanning the frozen Petawawa River, was unremarkable except for the sign posted at its entrance: "No stopping on bridge." At 2:47 a.m., Marcus's headlights caught something in the middle of the span. A car, driver's door open, hazards flashing weakly in the blowing snow. He slowed, already reaching for his CB radio. The highway was empty in both directions, just the endless corridor of pine trees and darkness pressing in from all sides. The car was a silver Honda Civic, license plate obscured by road salt. Marcus pulled to the shoulder after crossing the bridge, not on it, never on it, and walked back with his flashlight. The wind coming off the frozen river below carried that peculiar silence of deep winter, when even the air seems too cold to move. The car's interior light revealed nothing. No driver, no blood. The keys dangled from the ignition, engine still running, heat on full blast. A woman's purse sat on the passenger seat, wallet inside with ID. Jennifer Ashford, 34, from Ottawa. A half-eaten granola bar rested on the dashboard. The radio played quietly, CBC, mid-sentence in a report about livestock disappearances in Renfrew County. Marcus called it in. While waiting for the police, he noticed the tracks. Footprints led from the driver's side into the middle of the bridge, then stopped. Not at the railing, just stopped, as if Jennifer Ashford had been standing there looking at something, and then simply ceased to exist. Constable Chun arrived 40 minutes later. In her notes, she recorded everything Marcus told her, then added her own observations. No tracks leading off bridge. No marks on railing. No disturbed snow over the side. And I checked carefully with high-beam spotlight. The vehicle's front wheels were turned slightly left, as if she'd begun to pull over, then straightened. The driver's seatbelt was unbuckled but had been worn recently. Could see the crease patterns still pressed into the fabric of her coat, which was hanging from the passenger headrest. They found Jennifer's phone in the cup holder. Last call made at 2:31 a.m. to her sister in Pembroke. The sister, Angela Vickers, told Chun that Jennifer had sounded strange, distracted. She'd said, "There's something wrong with the bridge. I need to." Then the line went dead. The search lasted 3 days. Divers went down through holes cut in the ice. Search and rescue teams walked the riverbanks for 5 kilometers in each direction. Dogs found no scent trail leading away from the vehicle. The hypothesis in the official report was that Jennifer had become disoriented, possibly from carbon monoxide despite no mechanical issues with the car, and had climbed over the railing in a confused state before the snow covered her tracks. But Chin's notes included a detail that wasn't in the report. When they towed the car away, she'd noticed something in the rearview mirror. Jennifer had written something on it in what looked like breath fog, the kind of temporary mark that would disappear as the mirror warmed up. Chin had photographed it with her personal phone before it vanished completely. 2 words, "They're counting." The photograph was later found in Chin's desk drawer after her resignation, along with a file folder labeled Mercer County Pattern. Inside were printouts of missing persons reports spanning the past 15 years, all from the same 40-kilometer stretch of Highway 522. 17 names. All disappearances occurred in winter between midnight and dawn. None of the bodies were ever recovered. Marcus Holt stopped driving that route 3 weeks later. He told his dispatcher he'd accepted a job downstate, but his neighbor in Mattawa, a man named Ray Guthrie, said Marcus had mentioned something else before he left. I went back to that bridge in daylight, just to see, and I counted the rivets on the support beams for no reason at all. Couldn't stop myself. When I got to 57, I realized I was whispering the numbers out loud, and I didn't remember starting. The Ashford Bridge still stands. Travelers sometimes report their vehicles stalling there for no mechanical reason, usually between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m. The "No Stopping on Bridge" sign was replaced in 2020 with one that reads, bridge ices before road. Sarah Chun moved to Ottawa and took a job in private security. She refused all interview requests about the Ashford case. But according to her former partner at the detachment, she'd started keeping a journal in those final months, filled with numbers. Just numbers, in columns, with dates beside them. The last entry, the day before she resigned, read, 58. It's always 58. Why 58? Angela Vickers still lives in Pembroke. She keeps her sister's phone in a drawer, charged but never used. Sometimes, she told a grief counselor in 2020, it vibrates at 2:31 a.m. When she checks, there are no notifications, no missed calls. Just the screen lighting up the darkness of her bedroom, as if something on the other end is still trying to reach through. Ray Guthrie worked the late shift at the Mattawa Gas and Convenience, the only station for 50 kilometers that stayed open past 10 p.m. He'd held the position for 8 years, ever since his wife died, and he'd found that empty houses at night were worse than fluorescent-lit stores that smelled of burnt coffee and freezer burn. The store sat at the intersection of Highway 17 and 533, a waypoint for truckers and travelers who'd miscalculated their fuel. In winter, Ray sometimes went entire shifts, seeing only 3 or 4 customers. The isolation didn't bother him. He had his radio, his crossword puzzles, and a reliable routine that kept the hours moving. The phone call started in March 2019, about 2 weeks after Jennifer Ashford vanished. The first came at 1:17 a.m. on a Wednesday. Ray was restocking cigarettes behind the counter when the landline rang. Not the cell phone they used for card processing issues, but the old rotary phone mounted on the wall that almost nobody had the number for. He answered, Mattawa Gas. Silence. Not dead air, but the silence of someone on the other end, breathing. Hello. Ray said, Store's open. If you're checking hours. A woman's voice, distant and oddly flat. How many? How many what? Ray asked. The line went dead. He shrugged it off. Wrong number, maybe a drunk call from one of the bars in North Bay. But it happened again 2 nights later. Same time, 1:17 a.m. exactly. Same question, how many? This time Ray tried to engage. Ma'am, I think you've got the wrong number. How many pumps? The voice was clearer now, and there was something wrong with the cadence, as if the speaker was reading words without understanding them. 8 pumps, Ray said, confused. 4 on each island. The breathing stopped. Then, thank you. Click. Over the following 3 weeks, the calls came every second night, always at 1:17 a.m. The questions changed, but maintained the same strange quality. How many shelves in the refrigerator? How many tiles on the floor? How many lights in the parking lot? Ray started answering immediately when the phone rang, expecting it now. Sometimes he'd have the answers ready. 14 shelves. 732 tiles. He'd counted them one slow Sunday. 6 parking lot lights. The one had been burned out since Christmas. He mentioned the calls to his manager, who suggested disconnecting the old landline. But Ray felt oddly compelled to answer. It was something to break the monotony, and the voice, female, he was certain now, with a peculiar echo quality, never threatened or disturbed him. Just questions. Then one night in early April, a trucker named Dale Morrison came in at 1:15 a.m., stamping snow from his boots. He was buying coffee and jerky when the phone rang. Ray answered, Mattawa Gas. How many windows? Ray had learned not to ask for clarification. 6. 4 in front, 1 in the office, 1 in the back stockroom. Can you see through all of them? This was new. The questions had never been follow-ups before. Well, I guess so, Ray said. Why? How many people can you see? Ray glanced at Dale, who was reading the label on a beef jerky package. Just 1 customer right now. Look again. Something in the voice's flatness made Ray's skin prickle. He looked at Dale, then through the front windows at the empty parking lot illuminated by those 6 lights. His truck was the only vehicle aside from Ray's Tacoma. I don't, Ray started. The windows, the voice interrupted. Count what's watching through them. Ray's eyes went to the windows. The night pressed black against the glass, and with the store's lights on, all he could see was reflection. Himself behind the counter, Dale at the chip rack, the familiar cluttered interior mirrored back. But as he looked, his mind began automatically counting. The reflected fluorescent tubes. The reflected shelves. The reflected 3. He whispered, not understanding why he was answering. No. The voice said, gentle and terrible. 58. You stopped counting too early. The line went dead. Dale looked up. You okay, man? You went white. Ray stared at the windows. In the reflection, everything appeared normal. But he couldn't shake the feeling that the glass was showing him something incomplete, that if he stared long enough, adjusted his focus just right, he'd see the remaining 55 things the voice claimed were there. He closed the store early that night, first time in 8 years. Told Dale there was a family emergency, locked up at 1:30 a.m., and drove home with his radio turned up loud to drown out the silence in the cab. The next day, Ray called Constable Sarah Chun. He'd seen her around town during the Ashford investigation, knew she'd been asking questions. He told her about the calls, played her the voicemail from 2 nights prior that he'd recorded on his phone, just the questions about the refrigerator shelves. Chun listened, then asked, "Did you happen to see what number was calling?" Ray checked his phone's call history for the landline. Every call showed the same number. He read it aloud. Chun went quiet. Then, "That's Jennifer Ashford's cell phone number." But that was impossible, Ray thought. Jennifer's phone had been in police evidence for a month, powered down, cataloged. Chun told him she'd look into it. She never called back. The phone call stopped after that night. Ray kept working the late shift, but had the old landline disconnected. The silence in the store felt deeper now, more present. Sometimes, around 1:17 a.m., he'd catch himself counting things without realizing he'd started. The number of coffee cups in the stack, the number of lotto tickets in the dispenser, the number of bugs caught in the overhead lights. He always stopped himself before reaching 58. In May, Ray found Constable Chin's resignation notice in the local paper. No explanation given. He tried calling her personal number once, but it went straight to an automated message. This number is no longer in service. The only person Ray told the full story to was his neighbor, a surveyor named Thomas Pine, who'd just moved to Mattawa for a government contract. They were sharing beers on Ray's porch in late spring when Ray finally described the calls, the counting, the feeling that something had been watching from outside those windows. Thomas listened carefully. When Ray finished, Thomas said, "I'm surveying the old mining lands north of here. Archives say there were 58 exploratory shafts dug between 1908 and 1912 in Mercer County. All of them were supposed to be sealed in 1975, but I've only found records for 41 closures." He paused. Someone should probably count the rest before winter. Ray never went back to work at the gas station. He took disability leave for anxiety and eventually moved in with his daughter in Barrie. But sometimes, late at night, his daughter heard him in the guest room, whispering numbers in his sleep, always stopping at 57, never reaching 58. Thomas Pine arrived in Mercer County in April 2019 with 2 decades of surveying experience and a contract from the Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. His job was straightforward: locate and verify the seals on the abandoned iron or exploratory shafts dug during the brief mining boom of the early 1900s. Routine work, good pay, and months of solitary hiking through the northern Ontario wilderness with his GPS unit and ground-penetrating radar. He'd heard about the missing woman, Jennifer Ashford, but Mattawa was full of those kinds of stories. People underestimated the bush. They wandered off trails, got turned around in snowstorms, fell through ice. The wilderness took people. It was that simple. Thomas started his survey in early May, as soon as the snow retreated enough to make the old logging roads passable. The exploratory shafts were scattered across an 800 square kilometer area of Crown land, most accessed only by trails that hadn't been maintained since the 1970s. The archival maps were incomplete, hand-drawn by prospectors who'd used landmarks that no longer existed: a lightning-struck pine, a boulder shaped like a bear's head. By June, Thomas had located and verified 32 sealed shafts. Each was marked with a concrete cap, a stamped iron plate indicating the date of closure and depth. Most were shallow, 15 to 30 meters, test holes that had found nothing worth extracting. The deepest, shaft 17, went down 97 meters before hitting bedrock that the prospectors' journals described as wrong feeling, like striking bone instead of stone. Thomas made notes, took photographs, logged GPS coordinates. Professional work. But as summer progressed, he began noticing discrepancies. The 41st shaft, according to his archival map, should have been 5 kilometers northwest of Highway 522, near a dried-up creek bed. He found the location, found the creek bed, but no seal. just a depression in the ground, filled with decades of leaf rot and surrounded by birch trees that had grown up since the area was last disturbed. Thomas set up his ground-penetrating radar. The readings showed a void beneath the surface, definitely man-made, extending down at a steep angle. No seal. The shaft was open. He marked the location, made detailed notes, and moved on. The contract required verification, not remediation. Someone else would come to address the safety hazard. But as he continued his survey through July and August, Thomas found more unsealed shafts. Shaft 44, deep in a cedar swamp. Shaft 51, hidden beneath a collapsed prospector's cabin. Shaft 53, which his GPR showed branching into multiple tunnels at 40 meters down, something not mentioned in any historical record. By September, as the nights grew cold and the leaves began turning, Thomas had verified all 41 officially closed shafts and located 13 unsealed ones. His maps showed them scattered in a pattern that made no geological sense. They didn't follow or veins or logical prospecting grids. Instead, when he plotted them on his topographical map one evening, they formed a rough circle, about 15 kilometers in diameter, with the Ashford Bridge at its center. Thomas mentioned this to Ray Guthrie over beers. Ray had told him about the phone calls, the counting to 58. Thomas didn't believe in supernatural things, but he believed in data, and his data showed 54 verified shafts, 41 sealed, 13 open, for still missing. He spent October searching for the last 4 locations. The weather turned cold early that year, snow coming in mid-month. Thomas worked in shorter shifts, hiking out from logging roads that were becoming treacherous with ice. He found Shaft 55 on October 23rd, half hidden in a ravine. Unsealed. Shaft 56 took another week. It was marked on the original prospector's map as the Voice Hole, a name that made Thomas's skin prickle, though he didn't know why. He found it on November 2nd, in a clearing surrounded by white pine that grew in a perfect circle, their trunks leaning slightly inward as if pulled by something at the center. The shaft opening was wider than the others, nearly 2 meters across, and when Thomas shone his flashlight down, he saw no bottom, just darkness. He dropped a rock and counted. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. At 6 seconds, he heard it strike something, roughly 60 meters deep. His GPR unit malfunctioned near the opening. The screen filled with static, then displayed impossible readings, multiple voids, overlapping depths, as if the shaft descended in several directions simultaneously. Thomas backed away from the hole. The pine trees creaked in the November wind, and he realized he could hear something else beneath the sound. A low, resonant tone, almost below the threshold of hearing, coming from the shaft. He marked the location and left quickly. Professional protocol said he should place warning tape, but he had none with him. He'd come back, he told himself, document it properly. But that night, in his motel room in Mattawa, Thomas had a dream. He was standing at the edge of Shaft 56, looking down. In the dream, he could see the bottom, a circular chamber carved into the rock, and in that chamber, people stood in a ring. 57 people. He recognized some of them from the missing persons posters he'd seen around town. Jennifer Ashford was there, her back to him. They were all facing inward, toward the center of the circle, where something moved in the darkness. In the dream, Jennifer turned and looked up at him. Her mouth moved, counting silently. When she reached 58, she pointed at him. Thomas woke at 2:31 a.m., gasping. His room was freezing despite the heater running full blast. And he could hear that low tone from the shaft, impossibly, through the motel walls. He left Mercer County the next morning without finishing his survey. Sent an email to his contracting officer saying there was a family emergency. The ministry sent another surveyor to complete the work in December, a young man named Marcus Webb who lasted 3 days before submitting his own emergency resignation. Thomas Pine now works in southern Ontario, surveying subdivision plots and easements. He doesn't take contracts north of Barrie. When asked why, he says the winter is too harsh up there, but his wife told a friend the real reason. Thomas still has the dreams. In them, he's standing at the edge of Shaft 56, and the count has reached 57. In the dreams, he knows exactly where Shaft 57 is located. He can see it on his map with perfect clarity, can trace the route to reach it. And he knows that once someone finds and opens Shaft 57, there will only be one more to go. In his home office, Thomas keeps the map from his Mercer County survey. He's marked all 56 verified shafts. Sometimes, late at night, he takes out a red pen and stares at the map, his hand hovering over the place where shaft 57 should be, just off a forgotten logging road 6 kilometers north of the Ashford Bridge. He's never marked it, but he knows exactly where it is. And he knows someone will find it eventually, because that low tone from shaft 56 has grown louder in his dreams, and now it sounds almost like words, a voice from deep underground, counting upward, getting closer to 58. Melissa Trent was 19 when she took the job at the Mattawa Gas and Convenience, replacing Ray Guthrie, who'd left suddenly in June 2019. She needed money for community college and didn't mind the late shift. Growing up in Mattawa meant you learned not to fear the dark or the empty roads. The wilderness was just part of the landscape, and the night was when you could finally hear yourself think. Her training lasted 2 shifts. Ray's replacement, a day manager named Paul, showed her the register, the lottery terminal, how to reset the pumps when they froze. He mentioned that Ray had gotten spooked and left, but didn't elaborate. Melissa didn't ask. People got weird working alone at night. She'd be fine. The old rotary phone on the wall had been disconnected. Paul said it was just running up bills from telemarketers. In its place was a new cordless phone, the store's main line, which rarely rang after midnight. Melissa's first solo shift was a Friday in late June. The evening rush, such as it was, ended by 11 p.m. After that, she had the place to herself until 6 a.m. when Paul arrived to open for the breakfast crowd. She settled into the routine, clean the coffee station, restock the cooler, do inventory counts, watch videos on her phone during the long stretches between customers. Around 2 a.m., a trucker came in for fuel and Red Bull. While he was paying, he glanced at the disconnected phone on the wall and asked, "You get weird calls on that thing?" "It doesn't work," Melissa said, making change. "Huh, guy who worked here before. Ray something. He told me it rang in the middle of the night. Someone asking questions. People are bored," Melissa said, shrugging. The trucker nodded but looked uneasy. "You hear anything strange, you call the cops, all right? People go missing on these highways." After he left, Melissa thought about that. About Jennifer Ashford, who'd vanished on the Ashford Bridge in February. About the searches that had turned up nothing. About the way people in town got quiet when you mentioned it, as if talking about disappearances might draw attention from whatever had caused them. She turned her music up and went back to her phone. The next strange thing happened a week later. Melissa was doing the required nightly inventory count, checking the cigarette stock against the sales records. She kept losing her place. She'd count to 37, get distracted by a customer or her phone, and have to start over. This happened 4 times, and each time she got to 37 and stopped. Finally, frustrated, she counted aloud. 37, 38, 39. Her voice faltered at 57. The number felt wrong in her mouth, heavy, like speaking a word in a language she didn't know. She forced herself to continue. 58, 59. The store's lights flickered. Melissa froze, her pen hovering over the inventory sheet. The lights steadied, but in that moment of dimness, she'd seen something in the front window. Not a reflection. A figure pressed against the glass from outside, face obscured. She looked up. The window was empty. The parking lot beyond was dark except for the islands of light around the gas pumps. No cars, no movement, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had been there, watching. Over the following weeks, the counting problem got worse. Melissa would find herself counting things without realizing she'd started. The number of cars that passed on the highway, the number of items a customer placed on the counter, the number of moths circling the parking lot lights. She'd always stop at 57, as if her mind refused to go further. She mentioned it to her boyfriend, Tyler, who worked construction in North Bay. He laughed it off. "You're just bored, Mel. Your brain's making up games." Maybe, but it didn't feel like a game. In August, a woman came into the store at 1:17 a.m. Melissa noticed the time because it was unusually precise. Most customers rolled in at random times, whenever their tanks got low. But this woman had parked at pump 6, exactly pump 6, and had stood outside her car for a full minute before coming inside. She was maybe 40, wearing a winter coat despite the summer heat. Her face was pale, her eyes distant. "Can I help you?" Melissa asked. The woman stared at her. "Do you ever count?" The question sent ice down Melissa's spine. Excuse me. Count things. Do you count them? I guess. For inventory. The woman nodded slowly. It starts with counting. Then you start seeing the numbers and things. Patterns. 58 is the important one. When you get to 58, you understand. Understand what? Melissa asked, her hand moving toward her phone. Where they are. Where we all need to go. The woman's gaze drifted to the window. The shafts. They're doors, but not for coming out. For going down. 58 doors. 58 people to open them. Then the count resets and starts again. Ma'am, are you feeling okay? The woman focused on Melissa again, and her eyes were suddenly sharp, terrified. Don't finish the count. If you get to 58, you'll know where to go, and you won't be able to stop yourself. It's like a call you have to answer. She grabbed Melissa's hand across the counter. I've been driving for 6 hours trying to get away from Highway 522, but I keep turning around. It wants me to go to the bridge. Number 57. I'm supposed to be 57. I'm going to call someone. No. The woman released her hand, backing toward the door. Don't call anyone. Don't tell anyone. They'll count too, and it spreads. It's spreading already. She fumbled with the door handle. I'm going to keep driving. Maybe if I get far enough. She ran to her car and peeled out of the lot, heading south on Highway 17. Melissa stood shaking behind the counter. She picked up her phone to call the police, then stopped. What would she say? A confused woman had come in and rambled about counting. Instead, she called Tyler, told him everything. The counting, the woman, the feeling that something was deeply wrong. Tyler said he'd come pick her up. She could leave the store just this once. He'd be there in 40 minutes. Melissa agreed. She locked the front door, turned off the exterior lights to make it clear they were closed, and waited in the back office with the door shut. She tried not to look at the clock, but couldn't help it. 1:45 a.m., 1:52 a.m., 2:03 a.m. At 2:17 a.m., her phone rang. Tyler. Hey, she answered. Where are you? Silence. Then Tyler's voice, but wrong, flat, distant. How many? What? Tyler. How many minutes until you leave? Tyler, stop it. That's not funny. How many steps from the office to the door? Melissa ended the call, her hands trembling. She immediately called back. It rang twice. Then Tyler answered, sounding breathless. Mel? Sorry, phone died for a second. I'm about 15 minutes away. Did you just call me? No, my phone literally just turned back on. What? She told him. He went quiet. Then, stay inside. Lock yourself in the bathroom if you have to. I'm coming fast. But Melissa was already looking at her phone's call history. The incoming call at 2:17 a.m. showed Tyler's name, Tyler's number. But when she checked the call duration, it showed midnight seconds, as if the call had never connected. Beneath it was another entry, missed call at 1:17 a.m. from a number she didn't recognize. She clicked it. The number belonged to Jennifer Ashford's phone. Melissa quit the next morning, told Paul she had a family emergency and couldn't work nights anymore. He seemed unsurprised, almost relieved. Yeah, he said, nights are rough here. We'll find someone else. But they didn't. The store stopped offering 24-hour service. Now it closes at midnight, and there's a sign on the door. For your safety, we do not remain open late. Melissa moved to Ottawa in September to attend university. She changed her phone number. She doesn't drive Highway 522 anymore, even though it would cut an hour off her trips home. Because sometimes, at 1:17 a.m., her new phone vibrates. No calls, no messages, just the screen lighting up, and if she checks the timestamp on the vibration, it always shows a duration, 58 seconds. She never answers it, but she knows, somehow, that the count is still going. That somewhere in Mercer County, people are still disappearing, still being called, and that she was almost number 57. The Environment Canada Weather Station designated Station 12 sat on a granite outcrop 17 kilometers north of the Ashford Bridge. It was one of 40 unmanned stations scattered across northern Ontario, recording temperature, precipitation, wind speed, and barometric pressure every 6 hours and transmitting the data via satellite uplink. Derek Paulson was responsible for quarterly maintenance on 8 stations in the Mercer County region. December 2019 was his last scheduled check before winter made the access roads impassable. He'd been doing the job for 5 years, driving out to remote locations, replacing batteries, clearing snow from solar panels, downloading backup data from the station's internal storage. Station 12 had been acting up since September. The automated transmissions had become irregular, with data gaps sometimes lasting days. Derek's supervisor suspected moisture damage to the circuit board, a common problem in the older units. Derek reached Station 12 on December 18th, in the middle of a gray afternoon with snow threatening from low clouds. The station was housed in a white metal box mounted on a pole, surrounded by its instruments. Anemometer, rain gauge, temperature probe. Everything looked intact from the outside. He unlocked the panel and immediately saw the problem. The circuit board was corroded, but not from moisture. It looked burned, as if the unit had experienced an electrical surge. The backup battery was completely drained despite the solar panels functioning normally. Derek connected his laptop to download the internal data before replacing the circuit board. The download took longer than usual. The unit had been logging data every minute instead of every 6 hours, filling its storage capacity. While he waited, Derek ate his lunch sitting on the tailgate of his truck, looking out over the winter landscape. From this elevation, he could see for kilometers. The dark line of Highway 522 cutting through the forest, the frozen glint of the Petawawa River, the distant smudge of Mattawa to the west. It was a lonely place. Derek understood why the old prospectors had abandoned this area. There was something unwelcoming about the terrain, the way the trees grew in strange patterns, leaning away from certain spots, as if avoiding something underground. His laptop beeped. Download complete. Derek packed up his tools, installed the new circuit board, and drove back toward town as the snow began falling. That evening, in his hotel room, Derek opened the data file to verify its integrity before uploading it to the central database. Weather station data was typically boring, columns of numbers showing gradual changes in temperature and pressure. But Station 12's data made him pause. Starting in September, the barometric pressure readings had begun spiking every night at exactly 1:17 a.m. Not gradual changes, but sharp drops, 10 to 15 millibars in a single minute, then equally sharp recoveries. These weren't weather patterns. They looked like equipment malfunction. But as Derek scrolled through 3 months of data, he noticed something else. The pressure drops were getting stronger. In September, they'd been 10 millibars. By December, they were reaching 25 millibars, the equivalent of a severe storm system, except localized to this single station and lasting only minutes. More disturbing were the temperature readings. During each pressure drop, the external temperature probe showed a spike. Not warming, cooling. At 1:17 a.m. on December 10th, the probe had recorded minus 87 degrees Celsius for 37 seconds. That was Arctic Research Station temperature, impossible for this region. Derek checked the station's GPS coordinates against the timestamps. The unit hadn't moved. It was still on the granite outcrop. But the data suggested something was creating intense, localized atmospheric disturbances directly above the station every night. He cross-referenced the location with his regional maps. Station 12 sat almost directly above the location of Shaft 56, the voice hole that surveyor Thomas Pine had found and fled from. Derek wasn't a geologist, but he knew that mines could affect local weather. Temperature inversions, gas releases, even localized pressure changes from deep voids. But this data didn't match any patterns he'd seen in his 5 years of maintenance work. He wrote a report for his supervisor, flagging the anomalous readings and recommending that someone investigate the site more thoroughly. Then he uploaded the data and went to bed. At 1:17 a.m., Derek woke to his phone buzzing. A text message from an unknown number. 57. Just that. A number. He deleted it and tried to sleep, but couldn't. The hotel room felt too warm despite the winter cold outside. He got up, opened the window, and stood in the rush of freezing air, looking out at the dark bulk of the forest beyond Mattawa's sparse lights. Somewhere out there, Station 12 was recording its nightly anomaly. A pressure drop, a temperature spike downward, as if something deep underground was exhaling, breathing up through the rock. Derek left Mercer County the next morning, a day ahead of schedule. He told his supervisor the roads were getting bad, which wasn't quite true. The real reason was the dreams he'd had in that brief sleep before the text arrived. Dreams of standing at the edge of a shaft, looking down into darkness, and hearing a voice from below counting in a language that predated words. In January 2020, Station 12 went offline completely. The transmission simply stopped. Derek's supervisor sent another technician to investigate in March after the winter roads cleared. The technician, a woman named Linda Cross, filed a brief report. Station 12 destroyed. Appears to have been struck by lightning, though no weather events recorded in the area. All equipment melted. Pole bent toward the ground as if subjected to massive downward pressure. Recommend decommissioning this location. But Linda told Derek something else in a phone call, off the record. When she'd arrived at the site, she'd found the station's remains collapsed into a depression in the ground. The granite outcrop had subsided by nearly a meter, as if the rock beneath had partially given way. And in the center of the depression, she'd seen a crack, not wide, maybe 10 centimeters, but deep. She'd shone her flashlight into it and seen nothing but darkness. She'd also heard something, a low tone, almost below hearing, coming from the crack. And when she'd checked her phone later, reviewing the photos she'd taken of the site, she'd noticed something in the background of one image. A figure standing in the tree line about 50 meters away. The image was too blurry to make out details, but the figure appeared to be facing the destroyed station. In the metadata of the photo, the timestamp showed 1:17 a.m., but Linda had taken the picture at 2:30 p.m. Her phone's clock had somehow reset itself when she'd taken that particular shot. She'd left immediately without completing her site assessment. Put in her resignation the following week. Environment Canada never replaced Station 12. The location was marked as decommissioned due to unstable ground in their database. But if you access the archived data, which Derek did, once, late at night in his new office job in Mississauga, you can see the final transmission from Station 12. It came through at 1:17 a.m. on January 23, 2020. The barometric pressure reading showed a drop of 48 millibars. The temperature reading showed -112 degrees Celsius. And in the notes field, which should have been empty, someone or something had entered text. The system wasn't designed to accept text. It should have been impossible. But there it was, in the final transmission from Station 12, a single line. 58 at 1:17. The count completes. The doors open. They come up now. Derek never told anyone about that final message. He deleted his copy of the data and tried to forget. But sometimes, when he's alone late at night, he pulls up weather maps and looks at northern Ontario. At the Mercer County region, where the atmospheric data still shows anomalies every night at 1:17 a.m., not from Station 12 anymore, but from the satellite imagery itself, as if something is distorting the air above that specific location. A cold spot, growing larger each year, spreading outward from the Ashford Bridge in a circle roughly 15 kilometers in diameter. Angela Vickers answered her door on February 3, 2020, exactly 1 year after her sister Jennifer had vanished on the Ashford Bridge. The police report, filed by Angela's neighbor when she hadn't been seen for 3 days, noted that the door was unlocked, the house was heated, and there were no signs of struggle. But there were signs of something. Constable James Rowan, who'd transferred to the Pembroke detachment after Sarah Chin's resignation, found Angela's house in a state that his report carefully described as concerning but not immediately explicable. Every mirror in the house had been covered. Bed sheets, towels, even newspapers taped over the bathroom mirror, the bedroom dresser mirror, the decorative mirror in the hallway. In the living room, where a large wall mirror had hung, Angela had spray painted directly onto the glass in black. Don't count the reflection. The dining room table was covered in papers. Printouts of news articles about the missing persons from Highway 522. Maps of Mercer County with 57 locations marked in red pen. Handwritten notes in Angela's neat script, becoming increasingly frantic toward the last pages. They called her. They called Jennifer. She had to answer. It's not about the bridge. The bridge is just one location. There are 58. Why 58? What happens at 58? I can hear them counting in my sleep. I'm number 57. They need 57 to reach 58. On the kitchen counter, police found Angela's phone. The last call in her history was to a number that didn't exist, just 58 repeated. 585858585858. The call had been placed at 1:17 a.m. on February 3rd and lasted for 17 minutes. But Rowan's report didn't include what he told his partner off the record. When he'd first entered Angela's bedroom, he'd noticed the covered mirror, and underneath the bedsheet taped over it, He'd seen something written in what looked like lipstick, visible as a dark stain through the fabric. He'd lifted the sheet to read it. "I see you counting me." The letters were written backward, as if someone had written them while looking at the mirror from the other side. Angela's car was found 2 days later, parked at the Ashford Bridge. The keys were in the ignition. The driver's door was open. Her winter coat was folded neatly on the passenger seat, despite the temperature being minus 23 degrees Celsius. Her footprints led from the car to the center of the bridge, just like Jennifer's had a year earlier. And just like Jennifer's, they stopped. No tracks to the railing. No marks in the snow indicating she'd climbed over or jumped. Just stopped, as if Angela Vickers had been standing there looking at something, and then ceased to occupy physical space. The search was perfunctory this time. Divers checked the ice below the bridge. Search teams walked the riverbanks. But everyone knew they wouldn't find her, just like they hadn't found Jennifer or the 15 others before them. Rowan kept Angela's papers against protocol. He spread them out in his apartment and studied them. The 57 marked locations on the map. When he cross-referenced them with survey data, they matched the locations of the old exploratory shafts. 41 sealed, 16 unsealed, counting the newly discovered Shaft 57 that Thomas Pine had documented but never officially reported. But Angela's map showed 57 locations, which meant she'd found one more shaft that wasn't in any survey data. Rowan decided to investigate. He took personal time, told his sergeant he was visiting family in Ottawa, and instead drove to Mercer County with Angela's map and a GPS unit. He found the 57th location on February 14th, after 3 days of searching the coordinates Angela had marked. It was northwest of the Ashford Bridge, accessible only by snowmobile across frozen wetland. No roads, no trails, just wilderness. The shaft entrance was small, partially collapsed, hidden beneath a deadfall of rotted timber that might have been the remains of a prospector's shelter. Rowan had to dig through 2 feet of snow to find it. The opening was roughly a meter wide. When Rowan shone his flashlight down, he couldn't see bottom. He tied a weighted rope to a tree and lowered it into the shaft, letting out 30 meters before the rope went slack. He pulled it back up. The weight was gone, and the end of the rope looked burned, the fibers melted. Rowan decided not to explore further, but as he was packing up his gear, preparing to leave, he heard something from the shaft. Not wind, not the settling of earth. A voice. Female. Distant. It was Angela's voice. Rowan was certain. He'd interviewed her multiple times during Jennifer's investigation, had listened to hours of recorded statements. He knew her voice. She was calling from somewhere deep in the shaft, and she was counting. 55, 56, 57. Rowan backed away from the opening, stumbling in the snow. The counting continued, echoing up from the darkness. 57, 57, 57. Not progressing. Stuck on that number. As if Angela, or whatever was using her voice, couldn't move past it. Rowan ran. He left his rope, his extra gear, everything. Made it back to his snowmobile and rode back to the highway with his heart hammering and his mind refusing to process what he'd heard. He submitted his resignation 2 weeks later. Told the department he was moving to British Columbia for personal reasons. Never mentioned the shaft, the voice, or Angela's map. But before he left Ontario, Rowan did one thing. He mailed Angela's papers to a journalist in Toronto, a woman named Patricia Moreau who'd written articles about missing persons cases. He included a brief note. Mercer County. Highway 522. 57 people missing since 2004. Someone should investigate before it reaches 58. Patricia never responded. But 6 months later, she published an article in a small regional magazine about unexplained disappearances in northern Ontario. The article mentioned Highway 522 and included interviews with family members of the missing. It was sympathetic, well-researched, but ultimately offered no conclusions. What the article didn't mention was that Patricia had driven to Mercer County in March 2020 to investigate. She'd interviewed people in Matoa, had driven the length of Highway 522, had stood on the Ashford Bridge at midnight looking down at the frozen river. She'd also started experiencing strange compulsions. Counting things. Finding herself on the highway at 1:17 a.m. without remembering how she'd driven there. Dreaming of shafts in the earth, and a voice calling her down into them. Patricia left after 4 days and never went back. She told her editor the story wasn't strong enough for a feature piece, just a small article for the regional section. But her notes, kept in a locked drawer in her office, told a different story. On the last page, written in her handwriting but shaky, as if her hand had been trembling, "They're not missing. They're waiting. 57 are already down there, and they need one more. I think they've been waiting for a very long time. I think they're patient. And I think they're counting everyone who comes to look for answers, waiting for number 58. Patricia moved to Montreal the following year. Changed careers, stopped writing about crime or mysteries. If asked about the Highway 522 article, she says she doesn't remember much about it. Just another sad story of people lost in the wilderness. But she doesn't drive through northern Ontario anymore. And she's disabled the GPS in her phone because sometimes it tried to navigate her home, and the route it suggested always included Highway 522. Always wanted her to stop at the Ashford Bridge. Always at 1:17 a.m. Mitchell Park had been the voice of CJMR 104.7 FM, your Northern Ontario connection, for 14 years, hosting the overnight show from midnight to 6 a.m. His program was a mix of music, call-ins, and weather updates for truckers and night shift workers across the region. His voice was familiar to insomniacs, lonely travelers, and anyone who found comfort in the sound of another human being during the long Northern Ontario nights. In March 2020, just as the COVID-19 pandemic began shutting down the world, Mitchell started receiving unusual call-in requests. The station's phone line was open for dedications and requests, and most nights Mitchell would get a dozen calls, mostly from regulars, truck drivers who wanted to hear classic rock, nurses on break requesting something mellow, the occasional drunk from North Bay rambling about politics until Mitchell politely cut them off. But the new calls were different. They came in at exactly 1:17 a.m., several nights per week. Different voices, male, female, young, old, but always asking the same thing. "Can you count to 58 for us?" Mitchell would laugh it off on air. "That's a new one, folks. Not sure what the deal is with 58, but how about I play 50 ways to leave your lover instead?" The calls continued through March and April. Mitchell started recognizing some of the voices. One woman called repeatedly, always at 1:17 a.m., always with the same request. Her voice had a strange quality, flat, distant, like she was calling from somewhere with no ambient sound. On April 23rd, Mitchell asked her on air, "Ma'am, is this some kind of joke? Why 58? Because that's when they can come up," the voice replied. 58 doors open. 58 people to prop them open. "We're waiting. We're all waiting. We just need one more." "One more what?" The line went dead. After that call, Mitchell started researching. It wasn't hard to find the stories. Highway 522, the missing persons, the conspiracy theories on local forums about underground anomalies and government cover-ups. He found Patricia Moreau's article, found the numbers, 57 people missing, all from the same region, all in winter, all without a trace. Mitchell mentioned this on air during his show on May 1st. He didn't go into detail, didn't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but he asked listeners, "Anyone out there from the Mattawa area, Highway 522 corridor, ever notice anything strange? Weird disappearances, odd patterns? Give me a call." The phones exploded. 23 calls in the next hour, far more than Mitchell usually received in an entire night. People shared stories. Their cousin who'd vanished on Highway 522 in 2008. A coworker who'd left for a night shift and never arrived. A friend who'd become obsessed with counting and had eventually moved away from the region entirely. One caller, an elderly man named Frank, told Mitchell, "My daughter disappeared near the Ashford Bridge in 2011. Police said she probably hit ice and went through the railing, but they never found the car. Never found her. Week before she vanished, she told me she kept dreaming about holes in the ground. Said she could hear people calling to her from underground, telling her it was time to complete the count." Mitchell thanked Frank for sharing, but felt deeply uneasy. The stories had a common thread: the counting, the obsession with specific numbers, the feeling of being called to specific locations. At 1:17 a.m., Mitchell's phone line lit up. He answered on air. "CGMR overnight, you're on with Mitchell." His own voice came through the speakers. Not a recording. He could tell because there was a slight delay, as if someone was repeating his words a half second after he spoke them. "CGMR overnight, you're on with Mitchell." "Who is this?" Mitchell asked. "Who is this?" his voice echoed back. Mitchell's engineer, Leo, was frantically checking the equipment through the studio window, shaking his head. No technical glitch. The call was coming in normally on the phone line. "This isn't funny," Mitchell said. 57, his voice replied, but the cadence was wrong now, the tone flatter. "We're 57. We need you to be 58. Mitchell ended the call and cut to commercials early. His hands were shaking. He told Leo to screen all incoming calls, not to put anything through until he gave the signal. But at 2:17 a.m., the studio phone rang again. Not the call-in line, the internal studio phone that only the station staff knew the number for. Mitchell stared at it, then answered, "Hello." "Count with us," his own voice said. "Start at 1. We'll help you get to 58. "Who the hell is this? You asked about the patterns. You called them on air. Now they know you're listening. Now you're part of the count." Mitchell slammed the phone down. He told Leo he was ending the show early, feeling sick. Leo could play the automated overnight program, just music and weather updates, no live voice. Mitchell drove home at 3 a.m., taking the back roads to avoid Highway 522 even though it would have been faster. The whole drive, his car radio kept drifting from his own station to static, and in the static he could hear voices counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. He turned the radio off, but he could still hear it, faintly, as if the counting was coming from inside his head. Mitchell called in sick the next night, and the night after that. Station management was understanding, pandemic stress, isolation, they got it. But after 2 weeks, when Mitchell still hadn't returned, they asked him to come in for a meeting. Mitchell went to the station at 11 a.m. during daylight, told them he was quitting, didn't elaborate, just said the overnight shift wasn't working for him anymore and he needed a change. His replacement was a younger DJ from Sudbury, a guy named Alex Chun who thought the overnight shift would be a good opportunity to build his portfolio. Alex lasted 6 weeks before he started reporting the same problems. Calls at 1:17 a.m. asking him to count. Voices in the static, a growing obsession with numbers. CGMR discontinued live overnight programming in August 2020. They switched to an automated system, just music and pre-recorded weather updates. The official reason was budget cuts due to the pandemic. But the engineer, Leo, told a friend the real reason. The automated system kept glitching. At 1:17 a.m. every night, regardless of what song was supposed to be playing, the audio would cut out for exactly 58 seconds. In that silence, if you were listening carefully, you could hear something underneath. Not quite static, not quite voices. Just a low, resonant sound, like wind blowing across the mouth of a deep well. Leo quit in September, moved to Thunder Bay. When asked about his time at CGMR, he'd say it was a good job, nice people, but the equipment was getting old and unreliable. He never mentioned what he'd found when he went into the station at 1:17 a.m. one night in August, following up on the automated system glitches. He'd been alone in the building, all the lights off except for the equipment racks, and he'd seen something on the monitors, not a technical display, but an image, like a security camera feed. 57 people standing in a circle underground, faces upturned toward the camera. In the center of the circle, an empty space. And superimposed over the image, text that shouldn't have been possible because the system wasn't connected to any text input. One more. Then we rise. Leo deleted the footage and never told anyone. But sometimes, late at night, he'd wake up counting in his sleep. His girlfriend would shake him awake and ask what he was saying. He'd always stop at 57, never 58. Dr. Ellen Cho arrived in North Bay in October 2020 with a grant from the University of Toronto to research historical mining operations in Northern Ontario. Her focus was on abandoned exploratory shafts and their environmental impact, groundwater contamination, subsidence risks, and the bureaucratic failures that left these sites unmonitored for decades. It was good, safe academic work. Ellen had no interest in mysteries or conspiracies. She dealt in documents, geological surveys, and regulatory reports. But the Mercer County shaft system kept appearing in her research with troubling frequency. The 58 exploratory shafts dug between 1908 and 1912 showed anomalies that didn't make geological sense. The prospectors had been searching for iron ore, but the shafts didn't follow or veins. They seemed to be distributed according to some other pattern. Ellen couldn't determine what. The historical archives in North Bay contain the original prospecting company's records, donated by the company's last surviving descendant in 1997. Ellen spent 3 weeks working through the documents, hand-drawn maps, depth measurements, geological samples, and most intriguingly, the personal journals of the chief prospector, a man named William Mercer, for whom the county was named. Mercer's journals were strange. The early entries were professional, notes on rock types, shaft depths, equipment difficulties. But starting in June 1910, the tone changed. Mercer began describing sounds coming from the deeper shafts. A tone like singing, but no melody I recognize. The men refused to work shaft 33. They say it sounds like voices calling them down. In August 1910, we've reached 97 meters in shaft 17. Broke through into a cavity that shouldn't exist. Natural cave system? But the walls are smooth, almost worked. Temperature at the bottom is far colder than it should be. Left instruments down there overnight. In morning, barometers showed impossible readings. Atmospheric pressure equivalent to 3,000 meters depth, but we're only at 300 m elevation. September 1910, 5 men have walked off the job. They claim the shafts are speaking to them in dreams, telling them to come back at night, telling them about doors that need opening. I've increased wages, but may need to shut down soon. The final entry was dated October 15, 1910. We've opened 57 shafts. That should be sufficient for the survey, but I find myself planning a 58th. I don't know why. The location keeps appearing in my thoughts, 6 kilometers north of the bridge crossing. I see it in my mind with perfect clarity, though I've never been to that exact spot. I think I'll go there tomorrow. I think I need to. The journal ended there. Ellen found William Mercer's death certificate in the same archive box. Died October 17, 1910. Cause listed as accidental fall into exploratory shaft. The location wasn't specified, but a handwritten note clipped to the certificate read, "Body not recovered. Shaft sealed by company order." Ellen made copies of everything and returned to Toronto to write her report. But she couldn't shake the feeling that Mercer's journal was describing something more than mining operations. The specific number, 58 shafts, kept nagging at her. She spent 3 weeks researching the number itself. Was there geological significance? Mystical? She found nothing concrete. 58 appeared in various contexts, elements in the periodic table, verses in religious texts, numerology, but nothing that explained why a prospector in 1910 would fixate on it. Then Ellen found something in the university's anthropology archives. A master's thesis from 1968 by a graduate student named Robert Talmadge, titled Algonquin Oral Traditions of the Ottawa River Valley. The thesis documented stories from indigenous communities in the region, including a legend about 58 watchers, beings that lived deep underground and could only emerge if 58 pathways were opened for them. According to the legend, these beings had been imprisoned beneath the earth when the ice covered the land, and they whispered through cracks in the stone, trying to lure people into opening the passages that would free them. The legend specified that the watchers could only use human voices, mimicking the speech of those who had come too close to the underground places. And they needed exactly 58 people to prop open the doors, 1 person for each pathway. Ellen tried to contact Robert Talmadge. He died in 1972, but she found his widow still living in Ottawa. The woman, now in her 80s, remembered the thesis research. Robert became obsessed, she told Ellen over the phone. He'd gone up to Mercer County to interview elders, and when he came back, he wasn't the same. He'd stay up all night writing about those stories, about the numbers. He said the elders had warned him not to go near certain places, that white prospectors had already opened too many of the passages, and something was counting down until all 58 were complete. What happened to him? Ellen asked. He drove back up to Mercer County in January 1972. Said he needed to verify something. His car was found on Highway 522, near some old bridge. He wasn't in it. They searched for weeks. Never found him. The woman paused. Before he left, he told me he'd been counting in his sleep. Said he'd gotten to 57 and couldn't stop. Ellen ended the call feeling deeply cold despite her heated apartment. She looked at her research notes, at the list of 57 missing persons she'd compiled from public records and news archives. All from Mercer County. All near Highway 522. All in winter. She decided to drop the project. told her grant supervisor that the environmental impact was less significant than initially thought and the research didn't justify continued funding. The supervisor was disappointed but didn't push back. Ellen never published her findings. She moved into other research areas, safer topics like urban development and water management. She didn't think about Mercer County for months, until March 2021, when she received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "You were close to understanding. Stop looking. It's almost complete." Ellen threw the USB drive away without opening it. But late at night, she wondered what was on it, and whether she was already part of the count just by having researched the shafts. She moved to Vancouver the following year, as far from Northern Ontario as she could get while staying in Canada. She told friends it was for a career opportunity, which was partly true. But the real reason was the dreams that had started after receiving that package. Dreams of standing at the edge of a shaft, looking down into darkness. And in the dreams, she could hear voices from below, counting upward, 56, 57, and then silence, as if they were waiting for her to say the next number, waiting for 58. Carl Du Bois had been clearing snow from Highway 522 for the Ontario Ministry of Transportation for 22 years. He knew every kilometer of that road, every culvert that plugged with ice, every spot where drifts piled up and needed extra passes with the plow. December 2021 brought heavy snow early in the season. Carl worked 12-hour shifts, running his plow truck up and down 522 from midnight to noon, keeping the highway passable for the sparse traffic. It was lonely work, but Carl liked it. Just him, the truck, and the radio playing classic rock while snow cascaded off his blade. He'd heard the stories about Highway 522. Everyone who worked that route had. The missing people, the weird rumors about counting and underground voices. Carl figured it was just small-town mythology, stories that grew in the telling. People went missing in the north all the time. The wilderness was unforgiving. But on December 8th, Carl started noticing something odd. During his overnight shift, he kept encountering stopped vehicles on the highway. Not broken down, just stopped, often in the middle of the lane, hazards on. The first was at 12:40 a.m., a pickup truck sitting at the entrance to the Ashford Bridge. Carl pulled up behind it, hit his yellows, and got out to check. The truck was running, heater on, but empty. No driver. Keys in the ignition. No tracks leading away in the fresh snow. Carl called it in to dispatch. They told him to leave it. OPP would send someone to investigate. Carl continued his route. At 1:05 a.m., he found a second vehicle, a sedan, stopped on the shoulder about 3 kilometers north of the bridge. Same situation, running, empty, no tracks. By 3 a.m., Carl had called in 6 abandoned vehicles. Dispatch sounded increasingly concerned, said they were sending multiple units to investigate. Carl kept plowing, but felt a growing unease. At 4:17 a.m., Carl's truck radio cut to static. He reached for the dial, but before he could change the station, a voice came through. "How many?" Carl grabbed his CB handset. "Say again, dispatch." "How many?" The voice repeated, but it wasn't dispatch. It wasn't even human sounding. Too flat, no breath behind the words. "Who is this?" Carl demanded. "How many vehicles did you pass tonight?" "Count them." Carl didn't want to answer, but found himself recounting. 6. "I passed 6 abandoned vehicles." "Count again. Count everything." Carl looked in his rearview mirror. The highway stretched behind him, illuminated by his truck's strobes. And in the darkness beyond the lights, he saw them. Vehicles, dozens of them, lined up along the shoulder in both directions. Some he recognized from earlier in his shift. Others he'd never seen before. He counted. Stopped at 57 vehicles. "One more," the voice said. "Park your truck. Join the count. It's time." Carl's hands moved toward the parking brake without his conscious decision. He caught himself, jerked his hands back to the wheel. His foot pressed the accelerator, and his truck lurched forward, breaking whatever compulsion had been building. "Not me," Carl said aloud, to himself, to the voice, to whatever was listening. "I'm not stopping. I'm not joining anything." The radio exploded with sound, not static, but voices, dozens of them, all counting in unison. 57, 57, 57. Carl ripped the radio out of its mounting. The voices stopped, but he could still hear them faintly, coming from everywhere. The truck's heating vents, the space under the seats, Even the snow hitting the windshield seemed to whisper numbers. He drove straight through to the end of his route in North Bay, didn't stop, didn't look back. When he reached the MTO yard at 6 a.m., his supervisor found him sitting in the truck with the engine running, hands still gripping the wheel, staring straight ahead. "Carl, you okay? How many trucks in the yard?" Carl asked. "What? Count them. Count how many trucks are in the yard right now." The supervisor looked around. "Maybe 12, 15? What? Count them. Out loud. For me." The supervisor counted, uneasy but compliant. 14 trucks. Carl exhaled. Okay. Not 58. We're okay." He refused to explain. Took the rest of the week off, said he was feeling sick. The supervisor let it go. Pandemic protocols meant anyone feeling unwell stayed home. The OPP investigated the abandoned vehicles. Found 17 of them between Mattawa and North Bay, all left on the night of December 8th. No drivers were ever located. The vehicles' owners were identified, people from various communities, different backgrounds, ranging in age from 23 to 67. No connections between them, except one thing, found later by a detective going through phone records. All 17 people had received a call between midnight and 1 a.m. on December 8th. All from the same number, a disconnected phone registered to Jennifer Ashford. Carl Du Bois returned to work after a week, but refused to take the Highway 522 route anymore. His supervisor reassigned him to Highway 17 east of North Bay. Carl never explained why, just said he couldn't drive 522 anymore. But he told his wife something before he returned to work. They were sitting in their kitchen, and she'd asked him what had really happened that night. Carl said, "There are 57 people underground in Mercer County. They're waiting for one more. Once they have 58, something opens. I don't know what. But I almost became number 58 that night. I could feel it, the need to stop the truck, to get out, to walk into the trees, to find one of those shafts and climb down. It wasn't my thought, but it was in my head like it belonged there." That's crazy, Carl. I know, but on that highway, counting doesn't stop at 57 anymore. It keeps trying to reach 58, and it's getting stronger. Carl's wife suggested therapy. He went to 3 sessions, then stopped. The therapist was professional, sympathetic, but kept asking Carl to describe his experience in detail, to count how many vehicles he'd seen, to quantify his memories. Carl realized the therapist was asking him to count, to finish the number sequence, to reach 58. He never went back. In January 2022, the MTO posted an opening for the Highway 522 maintenance route. They received 57 applications. None of the applicants showed up for their scheduled interviews. The route is now covered by workers from outside Mercer County, rotating shifts, never the same driver more than once per week. The turnover is high. Nobody says why, but the workers talk among themselves. They talk about vehicles they see stopped on the shoulder at night, always in the same locations. They talk about the counting they hear in the static of their radios. They talk about the feeling that something underneath the highway is waiting for one more. Highway 522 is closed now, officially due to structural concerns with multiple bridges requiring long-term repair. The closure went into effect in March 2022, and there's no estimated reopening date. Detour signs direct traffic onto Highway 17, adding 90 minutes to journeys between Mattawa and North Bay. The official story is that the Ashford Bridge was found to have critical support failure after routine inspection. The Ministry of Transportation's public statement mentioned unexpected subsidence in the riverbed foundation and costs exceeding budget for immediate repair. But that's not the whole truth. The truth is held in a series of classified reports that were never meant to be public. One copy exists in a locked filing cabinet in a government office in Ottawa. Another copy was leaked to a retired civil engineer named David Sung, who shared excerpts with his daughter before he died in late 2022. The daughter, Marie Sung, eventually posted portions of the report on a conspiracy forum, where it was dismissed as creative fiction. But Marie insists her father, a methodical, skeptical engineer who'd worked for the Ontario government for 35 years, was terrified by what he'd read. The report, dated February 2022, described findings from ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted along Highway 522. The surveys had been ordered after the unusual number of abandoned vehicles and missing persons reports in late 2021. The findings showed extensive void spaces beneath the highway corridor. 57 distinct voids, ranging from 10 to 97 meters deep, many connected by narrow passages. The voids weren't natural cave formation. They showed too much regularity, too much geometric precision. The report included a thermal analysis. All 57 voids showed identical temperature signatures, steady minus 87 degrees Celsius, regardless of season or depth. This was thermodynamically impossible without an active cooling source. Most disturbing was the seismic data. The voids were emitting regular acoustic pulses at intervals of exactly 58 seconds. The frequency was below normal human hearing range, but the consistency suggested artificial origin. The pulses had been detected since at least 2019, when monitoring equipment had been installed, and were gradually increasing in amplitude. The report concluded with recommendations. Close Highway 522 immediately, restrict access to the area, establish a monitoring perimeter, and under no circumstances allow public access to any of the void entrances. The ministry complied. Highway 522 was closed, but they didn't establish a perimeter. Budget constraints, they said. And besides, who would try to access those remote locations in winter? They underestimated human curiosity. In November 2022, a group of urban explorers from Toronto posted on social media that they planned to hike to the Ashford Bridge and document the closed highway. 5 people, 3 men, 2 women, ages 24 to 31. They posted photos from their drive north, videos of their gear preparation, updates as they parked at a trail access point, and began hiking through the snow toward the bridge. Their last post was a video uploaded at 12:47 a.m. on November 17th. The footage showed them standing on the Ashford Bridge in darkness, illuminated by headlamps. One of them, a woman named Jess, spoke to the camera. "So we made it. This is the supposedly haunted bridge where like 50-something people have vanished. It's pretty creepy, not gonna lie. Cold as hell. But we're here. We're." She stopped mid-sentence. In the background, the others had gone quiet. Then one of them said, "Do you hear that?" The camera turned. In the darkness beyond the bridge, lights were visible in the forest. Not flashlights, diffuse glows, dozens of them, appearing among the trees on both sides of the highway. "What the hell?" someone whispered. The lights began moving, converging on the bridge. As they came closer, the camera picked up sounds, voices, whispering in unison, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. The video became chaotic. Footsteps running, someone screaming, "Go, go, go." The camera dropped, showed a sideways view of the bridge deck and a pair of boots running past. The voices grew louder, still counting. 54, 55, 56. Then the camera's microphone captured something else. A new voice, different from the counting chorus. Deep, resonant, coming from everywhere and nowhere. 57 are waiting. 5 more come. When 58 stand on the bridge, the doors open. The watchers rise. The video ended abruptly at 1:17 a.m. None of the 5 urban explorers made it back to their car. Search and rescue teams found the vehicle 3 days later. Inside were the explorers' phones, wallets, and car keys. The phones showed the uploaded video, but nothing after. GPS data showed all 5 phones had stopped transmitting at 1:17 a.m., their last known position, the Ashford Bridge. The searchers found footprints leading onto the bridge. Multiple sets, clearly visible in fresh snow. The prints showed the group running back toward their car. But halfway across the bridge, the track stopped. All 5 sets just stopped, as if the people had evaporated mid-stride. The case was officially listed as missing persons, presumed lost in wilderness. But the search commander, a seasoned OPP officer named Detective Laura Fenn, submitted a supplementary report that was never made public. In it, she described what the search team had found beneath the bridge. The ice covering the Petawawa River had cracks radiating from a central point directly below the bridge. The cracks formed a pattern, 58 lines, evenly spaced, spreading outward from a central hole in the ice. Fenn had ordered divers down. They reported that the riverbed beneath the hole had collapsed, revealing a void descending at a steep angle into the earth. The divers could see no bottom, even with powerful lights. And they'd heard sounds coming from the void, not water movement, but voices. Counting. The divers surfaced after 4 minutes, refusing to go back down. Both requested immediate transfer away from Mercer County. Both left the OPP within a month. Finn's report concluded, recommend permanent closure of Highway 522 and all access routes to the Ashford Bridge area. Something beneath this location is active and appears to be targeting individuals who visit. The pattern of disappearances suggests a deliberate, systematic process with a specific numeric goal. As of this investigation, 57 individuals are confirmed missing from the Highway 522 corridor. The 5 missing urban explorers would bring the total to 62. However, I believe only specific individuals count toward the required total. The mechanism for selection is unknown. Urgent recommendation: establish exclusion zone and prevent further public access. The recommendation was ignored. An exclusion zone would require explanation, public disclosure, media attention. The ministry opted instead for the structural concerns, narrative, and simple closure of the highway. Highway 522 remains closed. The Ashford Bridge sits empty, steel beams rusting, asphalt cracking. Snow drifts across the deck each winter, unmarked by tire tracks or footprints. But if you access certain government monitoring systems that few people know exist, you can see real-time seismic data from the Mercer County region. The acoustic pulses are still there, still at 58-second intervals, still increasing in amplitude. And if you filter the data correctly, process it through the right algorithms, you can extract something that sounds almost like words. A message, repeating endlessly. 57 waiting. One more needed. The count completes at midnight. The doors open. We rise. The timestamp on that message updates every day. The midnight reference increments forward, as if counting down to a specific date. Security analysts who've seen the data, and there are only 7 cleared for access, have noticed something else. The countdown appears to be targeting a specific date and time. December 8th, 2025, 1:17 a.m. Exactly 58 months after Highway 522 was closed. The location specified in the message is the Ashford Bridge. As of November 2024, 57 people have vanished from the Highway 522 corridor in Mercer County. Their names are in official records, their faces on missing persons posters, their families still waiting for answers that will never come. Those 57 are down there now, in the dark beneath the frozen earth, standing in a circle around something ancient and patient. They've been waiting, some for years, some for months, some for only days. But they're all waiting together, waiting for one more, waiting for the 58th person to complete the count. And when that happens, when someone finally stands at the center of the circle on the Ashford Bridge at exactly 1:17 a.m. on the right date, the doors that have been sealed beneath the earth since before human memory will open. The watchers will rise, and the counting will begin again. On March 15th, 2023, the barricades blocking Highway 522 were found pushed aside. No security footage existed of who moved them. The highway remains officially closed, but the barriers have not been replaced. On November 3rd, 2024, traffic cameras on Highway 17, the detour route, recorded 57 vehicles passing northbound between midnight and 1 a.m., all turning off onto the closed access road that leads to Highway 522. None of those vehicles have been seen since. The count continues.